Followed Home from School by TheBlackRosePetals. This happened around sophomore year of high school in Washington, and I was about 15. My house was a half-mile from the school, so normally I walked home and stopped off at my dad's auto shop to see if he wanted lunch or anything from the house, as I enjoyed walking around the town with friends and didn't mind taking detours if it wasn't raining or snowing. One day, as I was walking home from school, I noticed a man in a hoodie fall into step behind me. Since I was on the main street and there were a bunch of buildings around me, I paid no attention to it and figured he was just going the same direction to get to a particular store. I went back to my music and texted my dad, letting him know that I was a block or two from home like always. A couple minutes go by and I realized he was still behind me. And by this point, we're on the outskirts of town and there are seldom businesses and houses. So it was getting unlikely that he lived near me, as I was a solitary house on a corner property. To test my theory, I suddenly stopped and began texting my dad my suspicions and a description of the guy just in case. The dude realized that I was taking note of him and hot-footed it back the way we came, towards town. I waited until he was around the corner and booked it another 20 feet to the nearest house and hid behind it for a few minutes, so it would appear that I had just vanished if he turned around to follow at a distance. I waited a good 10 minutes and then peeked around the corner to check if he was there. Nothing. So I headed back to my house. This was the beginning of summer, so it was rather warm out, and I went swimming in our pool when I got home. Now, a side note, I developed rather early and had a large bust by the time that I was a freshman, and since I was an athlete, I was rather toned and slim. Swimming is how I kept my figure and muscle mass. I did 30 laps a day at our local Y to keep my endurance high. During my enjoyment swim, as I waited for my brothers to get home, which all are military men now, I noticed a truck on the side of the road by my house. It wasn't running, and there was a guy facing me with his phone out towards me. Remembering the creep that followed me, I immediately got out and covered myself with a towel and then called my dad. My dad is an ex-military. He was a tanker and a sergeant for the army for over 20 years, and he was very protective of my mom, my sister, and me. 2 minutes after I called, I see his black Suburban coming flying down the road and damn near drift onto the side road, pulling up behind the truck. He gets out and starts asking questions. "Who are you? Why are you outside my house and staring at my teenage daughter?" And many more. The dude panics and starts saying his truck won't start and that he didn't know what to do, and that he was trying to work up the nerve to ask me for help because I was the only one around. Being a mechanic, my dad offers to help fix the issue to get him the hell away from me in the house. Well, wouldn't you know it, the truck starts right up. Like magic, huh? My dad got very quiet, which is usually a very bad sign, and asked to see his pictures, and then proceeded to delete the 15 or so pictures that he took of me and the house. He told him he was taking a picture of his plate and his ID and reported him to the police for photographing a minor without consent. My dad showed me the picture of his ID, and it was the same freaking guy. He was arrested a few days later, and it was discovered that I wasn't the only person he did this to. He had pictures of at least 3 other girls from the high school at their homes. He was put on the offenders list, and forced to move towns because the parents of the girls wanted to lynch him for being a predator. The Time I Was Followed Home by a Creep by U/No Addendum 1399. This was about 25 years ago, and I was a young teen, around the 13 to 14. I'm a female and I'm 38 years old now. By that time, I was dating someone in a rough part of my town, and I had walked down to his house to hang out. I had left his house to go home at around tea time, which was 4 to 5 p.m., and I was walking through a small wooded area when something told me to look behind me. I looked behind me to see a guy following me, carrying a baseball bat. I started walking faster and faster, but he kept pace with me and just remained carrying his bat over his shoulder like he was going to swing it. I confronted him once that I was out of the wooded area and asked him what he wanted, but he just stared at me blankly, so I told him straight to stop following me. I started walking off at a rather quick speed, but he continued to follow me. I lived in a very small town, so I had numerous houses that I could stop at luckily. I knocked on several houses on my route home, but no one was answering, and I didn't want this creep knowing where I lived. So I just kept walking around and nipping down entries into people's gardens. But he'd be waiting for me when I thought that I'd evaded him. In the end, I had to go back to my house and hope that my dad would be home so he would deal with this creep. I got home, but my dad wasn't home. So I told my mom about it and she looked out the window. He was there, but nodded his head at her and then walked off. I spoke to my then boyfriend about the incident, and he went mental over it and asked around about who it could have been. He found out, gave the guy a polite warning, and started walking me home just in case. And I never saw that stalker again from then on. Me and my boyfriend split because of distance, as I moved to another city when I finished high school. We do still talk on social media occasionally, and he's happily married with 4 kids now, and I'm a single parent to 3 kids. But it still gives me a shiver down my spine when I think about it. A little background. I work as a babysitter for an essential worker. I take care of the world's cutest teething 7-month-old, and I basically have a screaming baby in my ear. My mother, father, and boyfriend have been taking turns picking me up from work because I was recently assaulted and robbed, and I'm still a little spacey from my concussion. I've also been having panic attacks due to the accused past because they let the guy that assaulted me go due to NYC bail reform laws and the lack of a grand jury due to the pandemic. So I'm basically too scared to go home by myself because I was assaulted a few blocks away from my house, and the guy was arrested across the street from my building. My mom even saw him hanging out at the bar across the street afterwards. So Saturday, I worked an 11-hour shift with a teething 7-month-old and was pretty tired by the time that I got off work. My mother was running late to come pick me up, and my dad and boyfriend don't have cars at the moment, so I have to ask them hours in advance to pick me up, so my mom was my only hope. Kind of tired of not being able to do anything by myself, I told my mother that I was going to meet her at the Starbucks around 12 blocks away. My mother agreed to pick me up there only because I know the area well, as I went to school there and hung out there with my friends. I proceeded to mobile order from Starbucks and go on my way to pick up my tea and brownie. I then put my phone away into my bag, which is really just a big Instacart cooler that I got when I worked for Instacart and I use as a purse or lunchbox. I say goodbye to the baby and my boss and start to make my way down the street. I saw a guy in a gray mechanic's jumpsuit on the street staring at me. Let's call this man the mechanic. I kept on walking, making sure to take note that the guy is walking behind me and still staring. I was getting a weird vibe from the mechanic. So I crossed the street and checked whether or not he was still following me. And he still was. So I crossed back over again, and he was still following me at this point. And I knew that something bad was gonna happen to me. So I assessed my options. I could stay on the main road and just book it to the Starbucks around 7 blocks away. But I have asthma, and I knew that if I have an asthma attack, when he catches up to me, I wouldn't be able to fight him off. I could turn and run to my friend's house or her job, but that would take me down more secluded roads, and I knew that if he caught up with me, I wouldn't come out of the situation safely. I could stop and get my phone out of my bag so I could call the cops, but that would give him time to catch up to me, and he would be able to take my phone away if he got too close. I finally decided to run to a chicken spot on the main road that was only 5 blocks away from the Starbucks, where I knew that I would be protected. My plan was to tell the worker at the chicken spot that a man was following me and to help protect me and to call the police. I worked next to a place where something happened to a local kid named Junior, and a store owner got the opportunity to save that kid's life. So, it has been sort of a local ordinance that if someone comes into your store asking for protection from a perpetrator, that you have to help them. Knowing this, I sped walk into the chicken spot and started to ask for help when I noticed that the mechanic who was following me starts jogging towards the store. So I quickly pull my phone out and dial 911. As soon as I hit call, the mechanic makes it inside the store and rushes towards me. I managed to squeal out a help me to the cashier, and the mechanic realized and took his wallet out and acted like he was going to take money out of the ATM. I took this opportunity to dart out of the door past him and started talking to the 911 operator. As I was explaining the situation, the mechanic came out of the chicken spot without withdrawing any money and was hot on my tail. Crying and having a panic attack at this point, I kept on walking to the Starbucks as fast as I could without having an asthma attack. When I got to the block that the Starbucks was on, I ran through the crowd waiting at a nearby Chipotle. Thankfully, I lost him in the crowd. When I got to the Starbucks, I explained what happened to the employees, and one barista watched the door, while another one calmed me down from my panic attack. Eventually, the cops and my mother arrived, and we made a police report for harassment. But that's all that could come from it, because he didn't touch me. My 70-Year-Old Stalker by U/Courtney HHH 69. I worked at a local pizza joint in my small hometown back in 2016. About 6 months into the job, I had an older man, around 70 years old, come in. He walked up to the counter and had asked me for a soda. He then sat at a table. A few minutes later, he came back up to the counter and asked what my name was. I told him, as we didn't have any name tags. I didn't think anything of it, and he walked back down to his table to sit down. After 10 minutes, he came back up to the counter and said, "What would you say if I were to ask you on a date?" Immediately, I got a bad feeling. I uncomfortably laughed it off and told him no. He then left. But a few hours later, I saw him walking back up the pizza place. I told my coworker that I was uncomfortable and I didn't want to serve him. She agreed with me and I hid in the back while she talked to him. After a few minutes, she came in the back and told me what happened. She said that he asked for me, and she told him that no one named Courtney works here. He then said, "Yes, she does. She's 5'3", has purple hair, and she's off on Tuesdays and Wednesdays." I have never seen this guy before, but somehow he knew my work schedule. I immediately called my dad. He's an officer, and I wanted to see what I could do. Well, there wasn't anything that I could do but avoid him whenever I was working. I had let everyone know the situation and how uncomfortable I was. However, whenever he came in, they forced me to handle him. The next time he came in, he was telling me about his 18-year-old girlfriend in the Philippines. He then went to the restroom and was hanging around in there for at least an hour, and then he just left. I would occasionally look out the window to see what was going on outside, and I would see him in his car with a newspaper in front of his face, watching me. Everyone would tell him to leave me alone and that I was only 18. But he didn't care. He would follow me around the grocery store, which was right next to the pizza place. I got used to all of this. Eventually, he put in a job application at the pizza place. I read the resume, and in the experience section, there was a few normal things. However, the last few things sent shivers down my spine. He had listed janitorial experience and chainsaw experience. My coworkers and boss thought this was hilarious, so they put it on the wall. And whenever I didn't perform up to their standard, they said they would call him and give him a job. So I left soon after that. I'm not sure if he continued to try that with the other girls, and a few months later, I started working on a coonhound rescue. I was talking to a few of my coworkers and brought this guy up, and the same exact things happened to them at their previous jobs. So, 70-year-old stalker, let's not meet again. My ex-best friend became my stalker by u/Dark Cosplayer 13. To keep the long story short, my ex-best friend Alyssa and I were friends for almost 7 years. We had a good and healthy relationship. She was my ride or die, and we did everything together. But we slowly started to drift away when I exchanged schools. We saw each other after school, so it was cool enough. Well, a year passed and I started to notice Alyssa hanging with the wrong crowd, and I didn't want to be any part of that. I started to notice how Alyssa would pick on me about my appearance and clothing, but she used to dress like me. We used to be dripped in anime merch, but ever since she started to hang out with the more mature college people, she changed. She would constantly tell me that I'm fat, ugly, or that nobody loves me, all that type of stuff. And my last straw was when she called my family poor. I lost it because my family has helped her with financial problems and even gotten them out of debt. So, I stopped being friends with her and I started to hang out with new people and get to know myself more. I have made a new best friend and everything was great, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from every corner. I always felt like someone was there, but I ignored it. Months passed and I still can't shake the feeling of being watched. And that's when stuff started to happen. My car would end up being keyed, my tires were popped most of the time, and weird letters I had to decipher started to show up in my front porch. But I'm dumb, and I decided to ignore the problems. A year later, I decided to hang out with some old friends from the group, and that's when I found out everything. Alyssa was the one doing those things to me, and every letter she sent was a death threat. My friend Tori, the one who witnessed everything, told me how Alyssa would stalk me and get mad that I replaced her with a guy. That's not what creeped me out. Turns out, Alyssa copied everything. I got a 2018 Nissan Sentra, and she got the same car. Inside my dashboard on my car, I have My Hero Academia figures and South Park figures, and she went as far to get the same type of figures online and put them on her dashboard. She would wake up at 6 a.m., drive to my house and wait for me to wake up and get out of the house so she could follow me. She tried adding my friends on social media and tried to convince them to leave me for her because she's a better friend than me. She even got the same clothes as I did. And according to Tori, when she would visit Alyssa at her house, Alyssa would have the same anime posters. I didn't believe her at first until she showed me the pictures. Everything was the same, as if Tori was seeing double of everything. Lucky for me, Alyssa was forced to move up north with her father. Her grandma kicked her out of the house, and everything went back to normal. Well, for now, I'm just scared that when she comes over for holidays, and she would start to stalk me again. Pof Stalker by U/Efficient Figure 8205. Some 8 to 9 years ago, when I was about 20 years old, I had been seeing this guy who treated me like garbage and never wanted to make it official. Well, that is until I found my now partner. I was really hung up and figured the best way to get over him was to find someone else to occupy my time. So, I made the leap to online dating. Online dating at this time was not a picture and swiping. It was a sea of cringy bios and a list of likes and dislikes a mile long. Anyways, on one of these online dating stints, I would go on every 6 months or so. And I met this overly friendly guy who was very determined for a coffee date. I begrudgingly agreed and I met him at a local Starbucks, but had a friend of mine meeting me there in an hour or two as a backup. While this guy was a little short, he was kind of cute on the outside and resembled Andy Samberg. He would stare at me without blinking for long periods of time and never took his eyes off of me. Like, at all. Well, anyways, He started calling me the Selena to his Justin within 15 minutes of meeting. So I got creeped out, and luckily, my friend showed up early, so I bailed fast. While I was walking away, this guy just stood there, watching as I sat with my friend to work on our project for university. And he didn't move a muscle for almost half an hour, except to send me a text after text, such as, "See you later, baby," and "I'm so lucky to have found you." When we finally left, I got to my car. I finally responded to his text and shut him down as nicely as possible, but while being clear that I had no intention of ever seeing him again. And then I blocked him. Fast forward a week and I'm walking out of my local dollar store, located in the same lot as the Starbucks that I met him at, when I see him standing by my car in the parking lot. Praying that he didn't see me, I booked it into the Walmart next door and crouched in the crowd. Well, this creep must have seen me because I see him enter the Walmart scanning avidly, and so I took my chance and ran back to my car like a track star. And while leaving the parking lot stuck in a line of cars, this dude walks alongside my car, just staring at me, waiting for me to look over. While finally pulling out of the lot, I see him in my rearview mirror, still standing there, staring. Well, needless to say, I took a long break from online dating and deleted my account after checking my blocked DMs that I had about 80 messages from this guy talking about a future together. Extremely concerned that this guy hung out in this shopping complex for a week, waiting to see me, I avoided it as much as possible for as long as possible. So, to knock off Stalker Andy, let's not meet. Stalker or Peeping Tom by u/Gisela. Me, a female and 21, and a roommate of mine, female and 20, live in an apartment on the bottom floor of the complex. For a long time, we had no issues at this apartment, other than slow maintenance, until our 7th month residing, and then we believe we gained a stalker. The first incident happened while my roommate was on vacation. On her last day, she told me she would be coming home that night or in the morning, so I left the front door unlocked and I forgot to lock the back door. At around 4 a.m., I was watching TV when I heard my bedroom door creak slightly open, to which my dog let out a growl, and then it closed. At first, I didn't think much of this. I was used to my roommate opening my door to check on me, and I thought my roommate was getting home. I woke my boyfriend up and he went out to see if she got home. To my surprise, she wasn't home yet, and the blinds on the back door were swinging back and forth as if someone just closed it really fast. The second incident occurred not long after the first. My bedroom has a window that someone could stand in front of outside. During the day, I leave my blinds open to let natural light in, and occasionally, I leave the blinds open during the night because I would have trouble waking up without the light coming in. It was around 5 a.m. I was up with insomnia watching TV when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man was standing there, staring in. I have no idea how long he was standing there. I scream, "Oh my God, there's a person!" And my boyfriend runs outside to try to get a glimpse of them. And the guy just runs off. The next day, I filed a police report and the police start sitting outside of my apartment during those general hours of the incidents. A month goes by, no more incidents. Well, until Mother's Day. At around noon, I left to go to my mom's, taking my dog with me. I specifically remember cleaning that morning, and when I clean, I like to make sure every item is in its place. A few hours go by and my roommate FaceTimes me and asks why I left one of the bar stools outside. I knew for a fact that I didn't and asked her to show me where the bar stool was. She turned the camera and showed me, until it dawned on me that the bar stool was directly in front of her window, which is higher up. My roommate hadn't locked the back door after taking her dog out to pee, but she had locked her own bedroom door. She was taking a nap, and the assumption is that he came inside, tried to open her door, was unsuccessful, and took a chair outside to try to look in that way. There were no more incidents after this that I know of, and I currently still live here. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.